Ms. Jenny Merrill, President of IADL, Mr. Jan Furman, Secretary General, Ms. Madeleina Sander, President APJD. Dear friends and colleagues, thank you for hosting this Bureau meeting. My name is Rania Ghosheh. I'm a Palestinian lawyer practicing in the Palestinian territories. I'm here to share with you some experiences with respect to the Palestinian prisoners' case and issues. For Palestinians, the experience of being a prisoner is very common. It's as common as having checkpoints in the streets or even being subject to tear gas or land confiscations. Since 1967, 40% of the male Palestinian population in the West Bank of Gaza have been the victim of some sort of detention by Israel. That is over 800,000 Palestinians. Palestinians in the occupied territories are prosecuted in Israeli military courts, founded and operating by virtue of Israeli military orders. The conviction rate at these courts is over 99%. It is not only that the status of these courts that can be contested. These courts are there by virtue of the Israeli occupation. The Israeli occupation itself is to be contested under international law, since it cannot be permanent, which is the case of decades of occupation in Palestine. 3 years ago, a friend of mine, colleague Buthaina Dukmak, the head of Mandela Institute for Prisoners, asked me to accompany her in a visit to Hasharon prison to visit some female prisoners, Palestinian prisoners. Hasharon prison lies within the borders of 1948 Palestine, that is Israel today. The location of the prison by itself is not innocent. It is not within the occupied Palestinian territories where it should be by virtue of international law, which means that Palestinian families, in order to visit their beloved ones in the prisons, they need to get permits to access Israel. And in many cases, these permits are denied. And this is the case of not only Hasharon prison, but many prisons. I went to the prison. I was waiting in the lawyer's room, looking through the glass window where I'm supposed to meet the female prisoners. I saw a very tiny human being, not taller than 130 centimeters, behind that glass. That was Dima Elwawi, a 12-year-old girl from Hebron. The soldier was putting handcuffs around her hands. She was even putting chains around her tiny feet. Even in the worst of my thoughts, I could not imagine under occupation to have a scene like this. What could a 12-year-old have done to deserve a 4.5 months of prison sentence in an Israeli adult prison? Dima's case is not the only case. I met Nurhan, a 16-year-old girl, accused of attempted murder, shot with 5 bullets, hit in the head by Israeli fanatic settlers. 4 of the bullets were removed and 1 stayed. Yet Nurhan was sentenced to 13.5 years of prison at the age of 16. Dima and Nurhan have the right to question humanity. What on earth could make a law allow such a situation? More and more, Isra Jabis, mother of 8-year-old son. She was moving between the cities when she was stopped by an Israeli policeman. She was having a gas container in her house for household. It exploded. Isra was burnt for 50% of her body. The upper part of her body was fully burnt. She was accused of attempting to commit an attack. She was sentenced to 11.5 years of prison, despite her urgent need for medical care. It's not only them. Ahmad Manasra, arrested at the age of 13, is serving a 12-year sentence prison. Decreased a little bit. Malak Salman, arrested at the age of 16, is serving a 10-year sentence prison. Shadi Alqam, arrested at the age of 16, is serving a 6-year prison. A 16-year-old prisoner was even sentenced to 3.5 years of prison, despite his leg being amputated during interrogation due to negligence in his treatment after his injury. Prisoners are not mere numbers. They have stories to be told. They all suffer because they are all initially victims under an illegal and unjust occupation. They cannot be statistics on paper. Nevertheless, statistics are there to show us something. Approximately 700 Palestinian children under the age of 18 from the occupied West Bank are being prosecuted every year before military courts. Currently in October, as per Ad-Damir statistics, there are almost 250 Palestinian children detained in Israeli prisons. 35 of them are under 16 years old. It is not only the experience of the prison. It is everything related to this experience, starting by the long hours of interrogation in the absence of legal counsel, which is a basic right. Night, day, under any conditions, within settlements, police centers within settlements, it doesn't matter where. Moving these prisoners, these kids, within a car called the Bosta, which is a special car to transfer prisoners. The seats, they are metal seats. Cold, hot weather, it's the same metal seats they sit on for hours and hours. It might even take days. They are denied basic rights during these trips. Sometimes they are denied food during the whole trip, access to toilets, despite needs for females for menstrual period needs. Sometimes these needs are denied. These are basic human needs. When taken to court, when they enter the court, the army green is the color that prevails. The judge is in green. The prosecution is in green. The witnesses, they are Israeli soldiers or even fanatic settlers. Tell me about objectivity within these courts. Tell me about fair trials in these courts. Tell those kids who will listen to them, who will make their case in these courts. The suffering does not end there. The suffering is not only the prison. The suffering is not only being away from home. The suffering is the lack of education. They are deprived their right in education, deprived their families, their right to be with their families, access to health services. They are deprived a lot of things. And at the end of the day, they suffer mental situations because of what they have seen and what they have lived. Who can explain to Nurhan, after she goes out of prison, 13 and a half years of prison, where did her childhood go? Where did her youth go? Where did her teenage go? Was she given due process of law? Was she even given a fair trial? To make even things worse, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu agreed on the 5th of November 2018 on supporting the bill in the Israeli criminal law reforming the death penalty for citizens accused of terrorist attacks. Within this context of military courts, who can serve the Palestinians, children, elderly, youth, who can serve them a due process of law, who is there to stand up for their rights. I call upon all friends and supporters to stand up for these prisoners. I call them to join in every forum, to write petitions, to write to their representatives, to get to know these prisoners, to learn about their stories, to send them messages of support. But most important of all, tell the whole world this injustice cannot prevail. Help free the Palestinian prisoners. Thank you for your support. Thank you for your time. Thank you for the meeting.